product of the mean and the median of the first 5 prime numbers. Note, 1 is not a prime number. Let's go. We've got some math language here, folks. We've got mean, we've got median, and we've got prime numbers. Let's talk about mean and median first. Mean is the average. The way I always think of it is, imagine if somebody you really care about told you that you were really average. Wouldn't you be like, hey man, that's pretty mean? So the mean is the average. That's the way I keep it straight in my mind. The median is the middle number when they're all in order. So when I'm driving, the median is the strip in the middle of the road. In numbers or in statistics, the median is the middle value of my data set. So I'm gonna have to get the mean, I'm gonna have to get the median, and I'm gonna have to get the product of those, which means I'm gonna have to multiply them. But first, we gotta talk about what the heck are prime numbers. Let's remember what those are. Prime numbers are the numbers that can only be divided by 1 or themselves. That's it. That's all they can be divided by. So 2 is a prime number. In fact, it's the first prime number because it's the first number that can only be divided by itself. It could be divided by 2, and it could be divided by 1, but nothing else. Okay, so 2 is a prime number. What's the next prime number? Well, let's look for the next one. I guess 3. Let's think about that. 3 can be divided by itself and 1, and that's it. I can't divide it by anything else, so it's also prime. What about 4? Well, 4 can be divided by itself, sure. It can be divided by 1, sure. But it can also be divided by 2, so it's not prime. Because see, another thing other than 1 in itself goes into it. So 4 is not prime because it could also be divided by 2. Okay, so 4 is out. What about 5? Well, 5 is a prime number because it can only be divided by 5 in itself. So there's our next prime number. What about 6? Well, 6 is even, and you'll notice that any even number, aside from 2, will never be prime because any even number can be divided by 2. Okay, so 6 is not prime. What about 7? Yes, 7 is prime because it can only be divided by 1 and itself. Okay, so there's another prime number. What about 8? No, that's even. It can be divided by lots of things. What about 9? Well, no, 9 can be divided by 3, so it's not prime. 10, no, it's even again. What about 11? Okay, here's 11. Here's our 5th prime number. So we've now got our first 5 prime numbers here. And we want to know the product of the mean and the median of those prime numbers. And remember, the mean is when I add them all up and I divide by how many there are. I'm getting the average, in other words, so let's do that. So my mean here would be, I'll add 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 11. I'll just do this here. We don't have to rewrite it all. 2 plus 3 is 5, plus another 5 is 10, plus 7 is 17, plus 11 is 28. So we've got 28. 28 is the sum of all of those. We're going to divide by 5. So when I get the mean, which is the average, I'm going to get 28 divided by 5. And that's some weird fraction. What about the median? Remember, the median represents the middle number in the list. So the middle number in the list, I could kind of cross off to see it, but this is such a short list, you might be able to see it already. The median is just going to be 5. So my median is just plain old 5 because it's the middle number in my ordered list. Now remember, we want to get the product of the mean and the median. So what does that mean? The product means I'm going to take the product, the multiplication of these two quantities. So I'm going to do 28 over 5, which is my mean, and it's a weird value. I'm going to multiply that by 5, which is my median. Now when I do this with fractions, remember to think of 5 as 5 over 1, because now it's expressed as a fraction, which is going to help. And remember, with fractions, when I'm multiplying, I would go straight across the top and straight across the bottom to get the total product. But one thing I can look out for is if I see a common factor here, like I see 5 can be divided out of the numerator and out of the denominator, leaving a 1 behind in both cases, I don't have to do all this multiplication. So the 5's cancel. I'm left with 28 times 1 in the numerator, which is just 28. 1 times 1 in the denominator, which is 1. So the product of these medians and means of these two quantities, the product is just D28. So we got a lot done there. We talked about primes, we talked about means, we talked about medians. There's a lot going on in this problem, but the answer is simply D. And if you got it, great thinking.